As a veteran, when you look back in history, everybody understands there's different periods of war and there's different types of veterans that come from this. If you are the kind of veteran that served before the time of smartphones, before the time of YouTube, this video is probably for you because I want to send a message to older veterans as to kind of why and give an overview on why you really should be looking into your benefits, even if it's a little bit later in life. So it kind of dawned on me that everybody that talks about this stuff online has most likely lived and spent the majority of their time with the internet and with the ability to learn and to research. And I can say this very confidently that I would not have been able to understand my claims process without the internet. It was the most important thing for me to not only understand my claims, but hear experiences or hear different stories from people. And a lot of them were related to people similar to me in circumstance, in time, and in age, because sometimes those are the people putting things out on the internet through YouTube or through different channels or podcasts. And other times, those are the people that have the confidence, the stories, the backing to do so. And there's really a weird mix when you look for veterans that aren't from a wartime period. And so the majority of my reference is understanding that the VA dramatically changed after 9/11. And it kind of goes to show, I talked to some people and had a few conversations where they were kind of in the invasion, the initial wave of people going in like 2003 into Iraq, and they got out of the military and they went straight to the VA after. And the VA was just bolstering them with like a bunch of medication and a bunch of different things. And it wasn't all necessarily working well, but they were throwing themselves at this new group of people coming out of a war from the Middle East that, quite frankly, the VA hadn't dealt with at mass capacity like that in several years. So the landscape of the VA and some of the rules that might have changed really was predominantly from the global war on terror, which is where I fall under, and a lot of people on multiple channels fall under. But there's such a big difference in types of veterans that we have today. We have the GWOT era veterans. We have this group beforehand that might have been predominantly in peacetime era. And then right before that, we have Vietnam. And Vietnam was so drastically different, but those veterans are still around and alive. We obviously have some veterans from World War II as well in this category. There are far less of them, but we are having this older population of people from the Vietnam era that really had an entirely different war experience, a different experience coming home, a different experience in the VA. It was shocking to hear the negative stories and impacts that these people have that weren't taken care of compared to what, fortunately, I would say the GWOT era has more backing, support, education, and overall just a better VA. Don't get me wrong. There are things that I currently dislike about the VA that happens on the regular. I have to say that in general, from my time even being in at the very beginning and hearing people that were getting out talking to the VA to when I got out 10 years later, there seems to be mass improvements. I cannot fathom what the VA was like before you could research online and figure out what to do, and you had to rely on a few doctors from the VA or getting your records or having a VSO. Shoot, I don't even know when claims initially even really started for people, but that was a crazy concept that so many people probably missed out on many things in life, and maybe that's how you find my channel in the first place. And so this interesting area of what bracket are you in where you're finding these videos? Where are you in this process? There's a reason that I made a course. It's linked below. Everybody gets a discount on YouTube. But there's a reason that I made a course to help people out because more veterans from every era are spending time on the internet to figure out these things because the VA has done one of the biggest failures to every veteran, which is not educating us enough on the processes that you can do, not just for disability, but also for healthcare and a variety of things. Their PR, their marketing absolutely sucks. Despite the fact they have good and bad within the VA and different people, their messaging going out is stronger now than ever, but historically has been one of the worst things I've ever seen. But also our military change. So if you were in a peacetime military, let's say in the 80s and the 90s, typical peacetime era between our two bigger wars, there was a lot more training accidents. There was a lot more people that were not taken care of within the military and within the VA. I can't imagine what being in the infantry was like, getting taught from people from Vietnam as I'm sitting going to spend the majority of my career in peacetime. That has to be an absolutely insane difference in experience that I had in 2010, 11, and 12 during my training time versus what you would have in the late 70s, early 80s from people from Vietnam. You have probably some of the best tactical experienced human beings on the planet suffering, most likely with a lot of ailments and issues still in service, if they even were, and then training a new group of people that are not going into the Vietnam War. I personally can't fathom that. But just because you were trained at that time doesn't mean that you've had a healthy outlook on the VA and your military experience, and it doesn't mean that you've had the right kind of help. There have been significantly more training accidents during that peacetime than there has been since the global war on terror. And every year, things might become more stupid or more garrison, or training might become softer in the future. But at the end of the day, making sure that we take care of soldiers and their actual lives has been a change that I know from experience from talking to people that happened in the global war on terror. So what does this really mean for you if you were serving in the 80s and the 90s? You might have been suffering from injuries or ailments, and just like the infantry culture now, hopefully it's changed a little bit now, but when I was in, you wouldn't be going to the med call, you wouldn't be going to sick call, you wouldn't be going to see the doc, and you would just suck it up. And that's what everybody did. And I would be willing to bet people from the Vietnam era were going to definitely perpetrate that as the tough training attitude to have at all times to basic training people, to their job training into the infantry. And so then you're left with this area of, well, I didn't serve in combat. I didn't really serve, maybe at a full capacity. Maybe you were in the Guard at one point instead of active duty and the Guard wasn't deploying, but you've had injuries, you've had ailments, you've had things that were maybe happening within the military. Maybe there was an assault that had happened that were never brought up. And now you're figuring out later, maybe talking to your son or maybe talking to a friend of a family, that you can actually get disability benefits for those injuries that actually did happen in training. So in 2001, right when 9/11 happened, we actually had 5 million veterans out of the 26 million vets that were actually enrolled in the VA. So that's around 20%. By 2014, this number had gone up to 43% that are using VA healthcare. So there's obviously a difference in education, either from the VA or from the internet, post the beginning of 9/11 into GWOT versus beforehand. And now with one of the most important things that happened to the VA that does affect every generation is the Pact Act, where you can look at your time in service, where you might have deployed, and the ailments that you have. And as long as you've been deployed in those regions during those times, you can show that on a DD-214. You have that diagnosis, you get your disability compensation. I can explain that in a full video up here if you want to understand what the Pact Act really does. So go check that out. But that is one of the biggest proponents of law that actually changed, that does affect these other generations of veterans. And in March of 2024, we actually enrolled in the VA another 400,000 new people, which is a 30% jump just from the year before for veterans. So this obviously can't come from all GWOT people. This probably comes from all eras of veterans. So what does this mean for pre-9/11 veterans? Because you guys still stand in this area of maybe needing to get your disability benefits, and it means that you need to spend the time, which you hopefully are doing now, to educate yourself on where you need to go to find the help and the capabilities to actually get covered by the VA. I highly suggest that every veteran from all eras at least look into the enrollments of the VA for VA health. And if you've never gone through the process for disability, that's why I have a course, but that's why many people on these channels talk about this. The veterans that came before us in GWOTs from every era and every war, we all learned from. They were the tough guys, the tough as nails people that really were going into war at a whole different caliber than we have now. We have drones and air support and all this stuff, but they were the ones that were fighting to be able to give us the freedom that we have. And in my personal opinion, every veteran before the GWOT was not respected like they should be. That's probably pretty obvious to everybody now, but at the time, I can't fathom getting sent to Vietnam on draft and then coming back and not getting that support. And I really hope that this video reaches an older audience that might be finding this on YouTube, or maybe it reaches people my age that have a parent or a grandparent, and you can send them this video or others that can help them educate themselves if they've spent time in service. I think the biggest thing that you can do as a veteran is to keep fighting. And if there's one thing that every generation has learned, is that you are able to keep fighting. You are able to put forth that training mindset that we've all gone through at basic training. And if you've gone through the infantry, then you did a lot of rucking. If you've gone through the Air Force, then you've done other things. If you've gone through the Navy, then you've done other things. We know how to tough it out. Every single one of you knows how to tough it out when you need to figure out something new. And it's not going to be a physical challenge. It's not going to be something with the military. There isn't even a structure. And in my course, I make a structure because it's hard to find these things without a structure. And a lot of other people online, we believe in your capability to do this, to help yourself and to help your family. I've made a ton of videos about how this impacts everybody in your life, not just yourself to get your own benefits, but it's because you've earned it. You have earned it. And if you weren't given that time of day, no matter what it was, no matter what your experience was, I please challenge everybody, give it another shot. Go into VA Health, switch VAs if you have to, go to a new VSO if you have to, educate yourself and give it one more shot, because I think we all deserve it as veterans forever and onward, but I really strongly consider this older group of people to be the people that had it the worst in terms of not having that education and not having the VA's backbone, that the GWAT is at least having better opportunities than everybody else beforehand. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to check out my course, it's below. It'll give you more information about how to make your first claim. But at the end of the day, keep educating yourself and keep fighting for the benefits that you've earned. See you guys next time.